From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions. This is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lori Tucker, along with Greg
Digital
Isaacs.
Center, answering your...
There we go. Oh, okay. Are you with us? I hope you are, and we would love to hear from you today. I'm Lori Tucker, along with Greg Isaacs, and we are talking, since college football is underway, NIL, name, image, and likeness, as we get going in the college football season. So, Greg, we're glad that you're here to help break this stuff down. Following the approval of the House settlement and implementation of its structure just back in July, college athletics is really kind of in a free fall right now, a state of flux.
It is a state of flux, and the NIL landscape has been analogized as the wild, wild west. And Tennessee has been one of the biggest, baddest gunslingers.
Yes, and we're going to talk about Nico in a minute. You know, we
are.
were talking about NIL. Nico is leaving. That's
Right.
what that stands for.
And so if we rewind, you know, Tennessee is the first university that stood up to the NCAA when it came to NIL enforcement, and they filed a lawsuit here in district court alleging that the way NIL was being enforced was created an anti-competitive advantage, and Tennessee prevailed, and the rest is history. And then the NIL landscape has been evolving ever since.
Yeah, let's get you caught up with the very latest. I mean, right now, Nico, I guess, is considered old news because we have recent lawsuits, Greg, starting with the University of Wisconsin. So let's talk about what's happening there and kind of the legal loopholes for its star player.
Well, here's what's going to happen. You know, when it's football time in Tennessee and throughout the country, you know, we're talking about high-profile coaches, star quarterbacks, running backs. But this year, the most important person on the field may be the attorneys, because this is all shaking out. The House settlement really was designed to tie up a lot of loopholes, because basically under the old NCAA rules, you were not allowed to pay an athlete to come to a particular university. Wink, nod. We knew the collectives did it, are doing it, and that was a legal fiction. Now, the House settlement, which is a $1.57 billion settlement, by the way, allows universities now to pay athletes directly unless prohibited by state law. Collectives are now limited to helping enforce NIL agreements.
This has really affected the collectives.
And you have retroactive back pay for college athletes from 2016 forward. So,
which is huge.
And they also, and here's where the latest wave of NIL controversy is going to come in. You have a cap. Right now it's between 20 and 22 million that a university can use to pay their athletes. So two major cases, and one you saw play out when Miami played Notre Dame the other night. The University of Wisconsin has sued the University of Miami for
over one player
by poaching or violating Xavier Lucas's 2-year NIL agreement.
And okay, here's the deal about Lucas. I was looking into this. It appears the fact that he, because he transferred to Miami as a regular student and not through the transfer portal, is that a legal loophole?
Wow, that should be in the loophole hall of fame.
Right?
Because what Lucas did, he enrolls at the University of Wisconsin, signs a 2-year deal. 7 days later, he unenrolls and enrolls in the University of Miami, but he didn't do it through the transfer portal.
Right.
He just enrolled as a normal student. Lo and behold, it looks like that has circumvented the portal, the rules, the regulations, and he started for the University of Miami
and did
against
well.
Notre Dame and had 5 tackles.
Yeah.
But in response, Miami may win on the football field. Who knows if they're going to win in the courtroom, because Wisconsin said, not so fast. So now you're seeing universities suing universities, but that's going to be a big case to watch as it unfolds.
Oh, yeah, we are watching that very closely. And I have to ask you if Lucas had some pretty good legal representation to make that little maneuver.
I think that lawyer would be a candidate for the legal Heisman because he was able to navigate and circumvent about every rule there was regarding the transfer portal and NIL.
Okay, here's another question. And this one really sticks out with me, being a woman closely following Title IX. And this is another lawsuit. It's a class action federal lawsuit. We actually first told you about this in December of 23. There are some updates now. Students from the University of Oregon's women's beach volleyball and club rowing teams claiming that school violated Title IX. Let's talk about that and where it stands right now since 23.
This was anticipated, and I spoke a few months ago with members of the University of Tennessee Athletic Department, and that's one of the reasons that Tennessee passed a law that we'll talk about in a few minutes, protecting them from the NCAA and litigation of this nature. But what you see is under Title IX, there had to be parity between funding for women's and men's collegiate athletics. And simply put, it hasn't shaken out that way with NIL. So what happened with the University of Oregon, those individuals sued their own university and collective under Title IX. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Where is the case right now? I understand it went to discovery. Is that the phase they're in?
It's ongoing, so
Okay.
it'll probably still be going when this season is over. Also interesting, other recent developments. Congress passed the SCORE Act, which removed the Sherman antitrust provisions from collegiate sports and made it so once this is finalized, that college athletes, even though they're paid, are not employees, which is very important for a variety of legal
Important to make
issues.
that distinction.
Two other things. President Trump signed 2 executive orders. One kind of mirrors the University of Oregon lawsuit and said that female athletes can't be circumvented or denied NIL monies. That's kind of interesting to me.
And shouldn't theirs go back retroactively as well?
Since they're anti-DEI, but yet we do an
that's a good point.
executive order protecting female athletes, which I think is a good thing. The other thing the president's executive order did, now that you have these salary caps, you have universities paying athletes directly unless state law prohibits it. It prohibits third parties from pulling, shall we say, a Pruitt and putting something in a
Paper bag
allegedly
with golden arches on it?
Yeah,
Is that where we're going with this?
golden arches, if that happened. But again, everyone is proven innocent.
I see what you're saying.
They go
We all
through the
know.
drive-through at McDonald's.
You said it.
So
I
it
didn't.
prohibited third-party payments that circumvent this. So, I mean, the biggest changes in college athletics is not the length of the game, the field, the players. It's the legality of NIL.
And let's go back to something before we take you to a break. You were talking about the fact that just because a player is paid by said university doesn't mean they are considered an employee by the university. They're trying to make that line of distinction. But if you pay someone, aren't they automatically considered in your employment?
Well,
How do you
they could
make
be an
that
independent
distinction?
contractor.
That's true.
Baseball got the exemption from the Sherman Antitrust Act
True.
years ago, and so now you're seeing Congress do what they should have done as soon as NIL was introduced. But if you go back and rewind to NIL in its infancies, you were supposed to pay players for their name, image, likeness. But the legal fallacy is until you walk on the field and you put on a helmet, you don't know what the value of someone's name, image, likeness is until they go across the goal line.
Until they show it.
So the money that was being paid,
Beforehand.
again, a legal fiction, was to induce them to go to a particular school, but they would say, no. And the athletes were supposed to have jobs and do endorsements and do things, internships. But other than going to a golf tournament or two, that never came to fruition.
Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
All right. Hey, before we let you go for a break, just a very quick break, and we'll be back to discuss more, mainly about the Tennessee laws. We'll go over those again a little bit deeper. I want to encourage you, sports fans, news fans, to go ahead and weigh in. Send us some questions. Here's your chance to ask Greg Isaacs our legal analyst some questions about this. Let's stick to the topic, but we'd love to hear from you. All right, go ahead, weigh in, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. And we do have a question up here. We're talking about NIL, and this question says, would you like to know? Oh, we're asking the question. Never mind. I just saw WATE 6 on your side. Here's the question we're asking you. What would you like to know about NIL agreements? And here is from Kara Kent. How is NIL being taxed? Good question.
It's being taxed like everyone else is being taxed. So, that's one of the interesting components when Nico Alamaleva left the University of Tennessee for less than he was getting here. One thing that may or may not have been factored in by his camp was the California tax rate, which is much higher than Tennessee. So these individuals, and I think one of the unfortunate fallouts of NIL you're going to see is 18-year-olds don't have the financial wisdom and responsibility typically that someone that has been out in the workplace, worked their way up. And
I
what
talk
you
about
see,
that a lot with other parents.
And what you see when you drive down Neyland Stadium is a lot of Range Rovers and a lot of exotic cars that weren't here pre-NIL. And I hope they're being mindful that $1 million or that $100,000 is going to be taxed at 28% more, depending on your earning rate, maybe 40%.
That money can go quickly. There should be, many people say, a financial guidance built into all that.
Well, it's like anything else. You have some people, and I know some people that are very integrous that are reaching out and helping these athletes. Yeah. I've already seen some, and I won't mention their name, that have come and gone and have taken advantage of athletes with their NIL deals by financing cars for them for free and charging tremendous interest rates at the end.
That's heartbreaking.
So it is heartbreaking, but back to your question, they're being taxed like everybody else.
All right. Kara, thank you for that very much. Okay, let's go back to Nico a little bit because NIL, Nico, Tennessee, that's what you think, and people still talk about it. It wasn't that long ago. Vol fans know all too well the story. Nico Iamaleava made that dramatic exit from Tennessee after last season. He was one of the first high school recruits to sign an NIL deal before enrolling at a school. We've been talking about that. He actually lost money, and we're not just talking taxes. He lost money or the potential to get millions of dollars by going to UCLA. So where was the benefit for him?
The Amalevas are synonymous with changes. They've created tsunamis in the NIL landscape.
You say the Iamaleavas.
Watching the
it's his brother
UCLA
Madden
game,
too.
No one has really, I think, mastered the pronunciation. But
I think I've got it down.
The first thing here in Tennessee, when we filed the lawsuit against the NCAA successfully, saying that their regulations created an anti-competitive advantage, Nico was the poster child for that, and we won. And it not only opened the door, kicked the door wide open for paying college athletes. Yeah. Then, fast forward, for the first time you had a high-profile athlete, apparently, there's some dispute among different camps, trying to re-up the deal in the middle of the season, and Tennessee said, sorry, hit the road, Jack, and don't come back. And it was interesting because people wondered, well, were there other reasons? Were there concerns about the team that prompted him parachuting out after having his $8 million deal?
Was it family, as he alluded to?
When he hit the portal, it was a do not contact one team deal. So he knew where he was jumping when he dove off the bridge. So that's interesting. Then the other thing that's interesting is his brother Madden. And his brother Madden enrolled in the University of Arkansas. Yep. He had a $400,000 NIL deal that called for a $200,000 payback, 50% penalty if you broke the agreement and transferred, and he did. So, there is talk that the University of Arkansas has hired a lawyer, Tom Mars, that the collective Arkansas X and Arkansas still may contemplate legal action. But really, every step of the way, Nico and Madden have been at the forefront, whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly of NIL.
Very interesting. Okay, let's talk about it. I'd like for you to weigh in on these things. Current status of NIL post-House settlement. We kind of touched on that. Let's go over 3 main points. Student athletes, who we've talked about, who began competing in 2016 through September 2024, again, are eligible for NIL back pay. Is that a done deal?
It is, up to 2016, and the payments are monitored by a separate entity set up by the House settlement, and they will go back to 2016, and the amount of money or compensation they get is payable over a 10-year period. If you'll recall, it was interesting. We had Todd Kelly Jr.
That was a great
volunteer
conversation.
ball, and we're asking these questions about NIL, and he just disclosed live here on WATE that he had just received a confirmation of his House settlement compensation, and it's payable over 10 years. But that is huge, and it's a $1 billion settlement that the universities have to pay for. But, you know, again, when you draw the line, the problem is, you know, what side of the sand you're on when you draw a line in the sand. And, you know, those that played before 2016, 15, 14, 13.
Not happy.
And they have a lot of reasons to be. But,
Yes,
you know,
they do.
at some point you can't just pay in perpetuity. But, you know, that's a really interesting development of the House settlement. The pay athletes directly is a very interesting development in that universities can now pay directly instead of the collectives.
Yeah, they're permitted to do that. So let's talk about how that came about. And the collectives weren't too happy at the time, but they still have a job to do and a role to play.
They're still managing name, image, likeness, and they're doing what they were supposed to and intended to do at the beginning. So that's interesting. But the part of the House settlement that is spawning lawsuits, such as the Oregon lawsuit, and I think you're going to see a whole wave, and that's going to be a nice segue into Tennessee's new law, House Bill 536. There is a cap on NIL money, which is approximately 20 to 22 million. So you're the university, and you've got to divide that money among your athletes.
We have a breakdown here. The preliminary estimates, and this is just for this season, show that Power Conference schools will spend $14.7 million on football, $3 million, a little more than that on basketball, and just over $350,000 on baseball. And your office has broken down how much that is per athlete.
Yeah, it's you know, really interesting, because if you look at the statistics, for example, on basketball, it's $218,506 per athlete. Baseball, $10,000. Football, $140,000. But again, that's the average. So,
right. That doesn't sound like much compared to Nico dollars and some other athletes who are getting a ton of money.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting, and then that's pay for play money, which is separate
from NIL.
Than NIL, where you're doing your commercials and you're making appearances,
the endorsements and all of that.
and whatever. So there are huge changes because of the House settlement, and again, the most important person on the field this season may in fact be the lawyer.
All right. On that note, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back. We're going to break down more of Bill 536, that House bill we're talking about. Stay with us. Betty, thanks again for being with us. We have a few more minutes, and here is the question we're posing to you. What would you like to know about NIL agreements? Here's your chance to send in your questions, and we will answer them as best we can. We have our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs, here at the ready to answer your questions. In the meantime, while we're waiting for you to weigh in, more of you, we've had some good questions so far. Let's talk more about Tennessee's controversial legislation, Senate Bill 536. May 1st of this year, one of the most athlete-friendly NIL laws in the country, took effect in Tennessee.
It did, and it's remarkable for two things. One, it's incredibly athlete-friendly, and when you juxtapose the lawsuit where Wisconsin is suing Miami for tampering with one of their
With one athlete.
tortious interference with contract, one athlete. Under the Tennessee law, basically it encourages athletes to shop around and allows and wants them to test the market. And the reason it does so, I think the intent is to make sure it's not an anti-competitive piece of legislation that could directly or indirectly violate the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Do you like this?
Yeah, I tell you what I like about it. It also says that if Tennessee feels, the University of Tennessee or Tennessee School feels that NCAA rules and regulations are illegal, that they can disregard them with no sanctions, and that they are immune from suit. Now think about this from the NCAA. We have a bill that the NCAA cannot sue us. We can tell them to take a hike if we don't like what they're doing, and all we have to say is we think it's anti-competitive. The only exception is if there's a court order or if it's would violate federal law. So really remarkable that Tennessee has this out. If we don't like the NCAA regulations on NIL, we say we're walking.
How do we prove, though, that it's anti-competitive? What would have to happen?
Well, just because
Give us a scenario.
we say so. You know, it
That
is,
boggles
yeah,
the mind sometimes.
It's kind of like Alice in Wonderland when she went down the thing and she said,
The rabbit hole.
to the Mad Hatter, the rabbit hole, kind sir, I can't understand you. And he said, Alice, it's Jabberwocky. And she said, what's Jabberwocky? And he said, simply words mean what I say they mean. And if we don't want to follow it, we're going to say it's anti-competitive and take us to court, but you can't take us to court because we have an exemption. So the other thing that's interesting about Tennessee law, we're consistent with the NCAA. We can pay players directly. Louisiana has kind of mirrored our law and has made a model.
We have another question coming in. Speaking of payment, the cartoonist chick. Thank you. We have to look kind of far away here.
That's not a sexist comment.
No,
That's
it's
actually,
not. That's their name. And we thank you for getting in with us. Here's the question: is this going to help smaller SEC schools get better players? What say you?
I think that's an excellent question because when you have this salary cap and it's being divided among everyone, I think you're going to have more parity for smaller schools.
Another good question.
A very good question.
Before we got to that question, you were talking, Greg, about Louisiana recently enacting similar legislation, which again allows schools to directly pay athletes for NIL. More schools following suit?
Yeah, and it's remarkable. 14 states say that you can't pay athletes directly. So that's going to be interesting as this evolves. But what I think is you've got an antiquated association called the NCAA. And if you look, and when I've been in legal battles with the NCAA, you look at their preamble, and it was to promote sportsmanship and academics and this very pie in the sky, altruistic, the student the idea of the student athlete.
It's been well regarded.
Yeah, but now it's like, show me the money. And I think its time has come. And I think you're going to see these Title IX lawsuits. Yeah. I think some universities, the big 800-pound Power 5 schools, why should I have a cap? Why should you tell me what to do? And also the SEC signed a pact that if they don't like what the NCAA says about NIL, they can withdraw from the NCAA.
So you're saying that NCAA could be at some point going away?
What I think the trend is, you're seeing the disparity between Power 5 schools that have millions upon millions of dollars, smaller schools, smaller D1s, D2, D3s, and it's kind of hard to regulate them with the same rules when you have a Texas or a Tennessee, and then you got Morehead State or Carson Newman. I mean, it's a difference. There's a million reasons not to regulate them the same. But what I think you're going to see, I think the NCAA is going to have one job and one job only, and that is March Madness.
Really?
Because I think one thing they do, they run a good basketball tournament, and there's not a lot of controversy. You don't pay people to win each round and to do all that. Basically, you just have a committee, and they vote, and they're coaches, and you go down the road. Other than that, I think people want the NCAA out of their business,
Out of football.
out of their football, out of football, and out of their pocketbook.
Very interesting. All right, we've got Hope, Director Hope, Producer Hope, off in the wings here, giving us our time cues. We have a couple of minutes left. You're a big football fan. You're a big UT sports fan.
Sure.
You support the games. You're there. I have to ask you, as a fan, now that Nico is gone, not to put you on the spot, but looks like we have a star QB in the making this year.
Yeah, Aguilar looked really
Yeah.
good against Syracuse, the orange one, the right orange one in that contest. But here's kind of to take the legal out of it. But you had a great comment. You know what you see now is every year the anticipation, because you go out and you buy a team and people transfer. So you don't know what to expect. It does add some excitement, but for all the excitement it adds, it kind of takes away the loyalty and you know the sign that you know they have in the locker room at the University of Tennessee. I will give my all to
You touch that
the
sign.
Neyland Stadium today.
Yeah.
It's basically, I'm being paid $2 million and I better win some games.
Is it hard to look at them as just kids playing the game now?
Well-
because knowing what the purse strings are.
Well, they're not just now kids playing
They're
the
not.
game. And here's what the rumble is.
used to be.
You know, other universities such as Tennessee have a 10% athlete surcharge now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's hard to look at them as kids when you're writing the check and, you know, you expect them to behave like adults. You
These are
expect them
elite
to play.
athletes.
And they are elite athletes. So there's two sides to this story. But at the end of the day, athletes should have been paid. Should they get paid more than professional athletes? I don't know, because at the end of the day, you and I are the ones that are paying.
Yeah. All right, we're going to leave it at that. And I do want to thank everybody for weighing in, especially Hannah, who just said, "Go Joey." Thanks so much for joining us.
Good shout out, Hannah.
That's right. We appreciate you, Hannah, and everybody who weighed in. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks for joining us a little bit early. We'll be doing the live stream now every Wednesday at 1:30 instead of 2, between 2 and 2:30. So thank you again for joining us. We'll talk more about this coming up at 5:30, yes?
Let's do it.
All right.